Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. I'm Aaron, y'all. People may know me on Twitter as Afrocosmist. Previously, before that, Posadas Trap God or Thaddeus Stevens or Paradoomer or I don't even fucking what's the
All the
last one I
fallen
had? Borg
soldiers,
posting.
yeah.
Yeah, all the fallen soldiers. But yeah, people can find me on Twitter. I haven't been posting much lately, but I post retro sci-fi and also the occasional take. And if people want to listen to me, I also host right now I co-host two podcasts,
Hmm.
the Trillbillies and Struggle Session. And I used to record Everybody Loves Communism with
Hmm.
my friends, excuse me, Jamie Peck and Jorge Rocha, but we haven't done that in a minute, but we're still cool. But we
Got
just
it, got it.
haven't really, shit happens, found the time. But people can check out those three podcasts if they want to listen to more of me ranting and probably throwing in some sci-fi references as well.
Yeah. I know last time we sat down, we talked about like sci-fi and everything. I think I was just starting my Deep Space Nine rewatch.
hmm
Um,
I'm actually rewatching it right now. I think I'm in season three. I think
yeah.
I'm finishing the episode Civil Defense
Hmm.
with the famous line attention, Bajoran workers,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
I I stopped for a little bit. So I stopped like mid season three. Like life stuff came up, and I just started watching other things and everything like that. And I actually came back and finished it out in October.
Mm.
So like from October to November, I was like watching the last couple of seasons, and I don't know, it was very different consuming it, while thinking about everything that was happening. You know?
Well, we could get into it now, but
Yeah, we'll get to it in a second, but
yeah, but I'm just as just leading into the discussion, especially if
mhm,
we're going to talk about what's going on in Israel and Gaza and Palestine. I've been rewatching DS9, and as you
mhm.
were implying, sort of the themes of that show, where you
Yeah,
have an imperial power, the Cardassians, who are an occupying force that one could see as the Israeli occupying force, right?
sure.
And then you have the Bajorians, which one could see as Palestinians. But I was also thinking about Babylon 5, and
Yes,
also too, I
God,
want to say that any of these either of these two groups, that's the way I see it, Space Israel and Space Palestine.
sure.
But either of these two groups and peoples or races can be, the a parallel. You can lend a parallel to any, set of, oppressed and the oppressor. But
Hmm.
Babylon 5 is really, what what I was thinking of, man, because there's this line that Jakar, who is a member of this formerly colonized, pretty much enslaved, genocided race,
Yeah,
he has this amazing line where the reoccupation has begun again. The Centauri's, are
yeah,
reoccupying
yeah.
Narn, which is Jakar's planet. Anyway, I don't want to, give too much, but he just has this amazing monologue, where he just talks about the need to be free and how that is the strongest force in the universe. And I mean, this is a show, and I don't want to do the corny thing that liberals do, where liberals equate everything to fucking Harry Potter,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
things of geopolitical consequence and
I
import. But I mean, it is, and I want to ask you about this, man, because
mhm.
I
Yeah,
was talking about this on the Trillbillies. You know, we were talking about Terrence to just watch Andor, right? And I'm
yeah.
talking about Babylon 5 or DS9, and there are these, especially in science fiction, but there are Hunger Games, I guess is another one, but there are
I-
other.
I'll get back to that in a second, but I actually have an idea about that too. Yeah,
But I guess just shut up, just to ask
yeah.
you, man. What I guess you could talk about, yeah, not gonna do the Zizek voice, but ideology, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
guess you can talk about ideology or cultural hegemony, whatever the case may be, but and all those from a Marxist standpoint. But it just as a comment, it's just astonishing that we have things like this that exist in our culture,
Mhm,
like
mhm.
media that is, if it's not revolutionary in terms of praxis, right, or actually having a
Yeah,
revolutionary culture, I mean, it's undergirded by themes
it
of
ha
radicalism, and it's
it
just
has
weird.
markings of understanding of like revolutionary
Exactly.
struggle. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just weird that, like, amidst, an ongoing genocide and just, the ongoing horrors that we see, but especially like, I'm thinking of the brought up Hunger Games because I think there's I haven't watched it, but I think there's a scene in one of the movies or the
Hmm.
books where they bomb a fucking hospital.
They do,
And
yeah,
you know
yeah,
what I mean?
yeah.
It's like I don't know, man. It's like I guess all I'm saying is like that's like it feels very placating and very like it's almost like this media seems to serve a role of absolving people of any
Yes.
responsibility or any sort of
It makes you feel like
introspection.
it reminds me because I really enjoyed like Mr. Robot when it first came out, but now like in retrospect, like I look at it as this kind of stand-in for like a revolutionary struggle, you know? Like it's very much like 6 years past like 2008 2009, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and everything that happened in Wall Street and everything. And so it's kind of mimicking like this anger that I think people still absolutely had towards like larger powers, towards like just power structure in general, and then giving people kind of like a taste of like, well, what would that look like if people actually took power. And the first season or so are really interesting, and then it gets into like, oh, China would be bad, obviously, like they do Belt and Road everywhere, it'd be crazy,
yeah, yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
but like it's very interesting that they like go down this road of like, well, what might happen if you all want that revolution so much. Oh, well, it would actually be bad, and just people would assume more power. And I think a certain part of that's true, but it's still like kind of giving people this taste instead of them actually experiencing it themselves. And I guess we can blow that up to all media, but I do think, yeah, there's a lot of sci-fi in general that kind of like tackles that.
Yeah,
And when you're
yeah.
speaking about like Hunger Games, I watched the newest movie like right before the new year, The Songbirds and Snakes or something, I think it's called. And I thought it was very interesting because like I've seen the other Hunger Game movies in passing. I didn't really pay attention after the first one, but this one I think took great like struggles because it's like a prequel and it's showing how this dictator became a dictator.
Mhm.
And I think it kind of took great care to not show him like as someone that's needing redemption. Like
Yeah,
he was a monster the entire time. Like his focus was on like besides his love for this person that kind of like started to tear him away from his, fascist intent. He was always a fascist,
yeah,
and the only thing that he really liked about this girl to begin with was those like trappings of like revolutionary liberatory struggle. There wasn't anything else that like he wasn't ever going to commit to that. And
yeah. And he was
they
never going to
showed
be a redeeming figure. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
he always just thought that affectation of her was interesting, but he makes it very clear like that when she's like, well, why don't you just stay here, he's like, no, you should come with me, like this place is trash, you need to go
yeah,
back to the city, the place that has like all the underpinnings of like fascist regalia everywhere, like
yeah.
this is something that can be like reformed. So
It,
it's
it's
like,
very, it's
yeah.
very much kind of the way that I guess bourgeois ideology sort of works, or capitalist ideology, sort of works. It's this sort of um um you are he's obsessed with the appearance
Mm-hmm.
of who this person is or how
Yes.
they appear in his mind's eye
Mm-hmm.
instead of the essence of who they are.
Yeah.
And like I don't know, I was thinking about you were talking about something like Mr. Robot, and I
Mm-hmm.
like that show too. And not to like belabor the point too much, but that show, it always interested me how that show has these very anti-establishment, vaguely anti-capitalist,
Yeah.
anti-consumerist sentiments. But it's like you were saying, you brought up a really good point. It's like the absence of struggle.
Yes. Yes.
It's like I'm almost surprised that that show, maybe it has, maybe it has, but that it hasn't been recuperated yet by right wing, libertarian, or possibly even QAnon folks.
You
You know what
could
I
see
mean?
where it would go that way,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You know,
think
it,
Sam Esmail did. And I watched this a couple weeks ago as well. He did a movie recently.
yeah, let
Um,
the world burn or something like that.
yeah, and
Or
it
no, there's
was
that the Vincent Bevins book. I'm thinking of the
no,
Vincent
it's
Bevins book. What's it called?
no, it's Leave the World Behind.
Leave the World
Leave the
behind.
World
Yeah, I'm
Behind.
thinking of
Yeah,
the. I said let the world burn. That's a
yeah,
Vincent Bevins book I've been
yeah,
meaning to
yeah.
buy. But yeah,
But it's
recommend that
also
too.
like it's very interesting. almost apolitical like ideation of like how America falls. It's like I don't want to call it bad because just because I think like the politics are kind of like weird and garbage. Like it's an interesting movie. But like
You know.
towards the end they do
Mhm.
the well, like who knows? Anybody could really have been the puppet master in this, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay.
It could have been the militias or it could have been Antifa. You know a movie that's
Yeah,
like, dude,
yeah.
it's like the what is it, the Alex Garland movie coming out. I think it's the A24 Civil
Yeah,
War
Civil
movie,
War, yeah.
where it's like everybody was making fun of it because it's like, okay, you have Texas and California teaming up. But you know what that movie is, man? And I guess this is kind of like circling back to
Hmm.
what we're talking about, like the appearance of something rather than the
Yes.
substance, right? If we're talking about sort of the spectacle, I guess, in a
Right.
Debordian sense,
And that's what I said. I want to watch the spectacle of Civil War because I'd love to know how we've gotten to California being a, an autonomous state along with like Texas. I'd love to know like what the
Yeah.
politics of this movie are supposed to be. I'm not going to take it seriously. I don't think it's like a harbinger of like this is how it would play out because that's boring.
No, and also too, one thing I obviously do want to see,
Hmm.
DC get fucking blown up and turn
Yeah.
into a war zone.
Yeah.
But also too, like it's like movies like this, and I mean, not to get to belabor the point or not to make a moot point, and I mean, all these things are just wedded with hypocrisy, right?
Yeah.
So wedded to hypocrisy. So and pointing hypocrisy out sometimes doesn't really make any sense. But though those movies that are like apolitical like that, that have these squishy sort of chameleon like politics, you know what I
Hmm.
mean? Or chimera like politics is
Yeah.
like, I think they're just like made to not upset anybody, right? Simply put,
Absolutely.
right? You know what I mean? Not to upset like any backers of the film, not to upset any potential fans or the audience of the film. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it's not that that matters because you're still gonna have people like Jesse Waters on Fox News that are gonna take clips from this movie, you know what I mean, and talk about this is the world that liberals imagine,
Right.
oh,
Exactly.
this is how they imagine us. But it's like these, I don't know. I'm thinking about another thing I want to bring up is that I was thinking about Judas and the Black Messiah, which is
Yeah.
this HBO. It was an HBO. It came on HBO, dude. Okay, so
Yeah.
you were talking about how in that Hunger Games movie that this character what you liked about it is that there wasn't the need for redemption, right? To
Yes.
satisfy the audience's
Hmm.
sort of very bourgeois sort of indoctrination or this idea that like, well, both sides and well, maybe some Nazis are actually, what if we just talk to but like
Right.
in that movie, it does, I mean, the exact opposite because that movie is from the point of view of the informant, right? So even
Yes.
when you have
Yes.
a
Which I thought
movie,
was the wildest idea.
dude, even when you have a movie that's about a radical figure,
Hmm.
which is not even really about Fred Hampton, the movie is like he's backgrounding the film. It's
Hmm.
really about the informant. But and at the end, sure, they say that then he committed suicide. Like, but like, that's like that's not that I'm saying that this guy didn't live a tortured, but he was a fucking snitch. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
exactly.
he was a
Like,
snitch who
oh,
got a
that's so
fucking great
sad.
revolutionary killed. Exactly, exactly. Anyway, I
Yeah.
know, but not to belabor the point too much, but I just think like kind of just I've just I got a new TV, man. So
Hmm.
I've been watching a lot of television and
Yeah.
I've been writing a lot too. And in my own work, I just think about like how I don't know, because I'm not gonna say that I think art should have a purpose. If anything,
Hmm.
art should just try to maybe just I don't know, capture some aspect of the human experience. But even that's kind of like I don't even know what that means, right? But
Sure.
I I I I do think at least for me politically, excuse me, I think that being a communist, I think that like as a writer, I should try to increase class consciousness or speak to the working experience or speak to I don't know, like the way all this shit is structured and ordered and critique it,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And not be heavy-handed with it, but I've just been watching a lot of like TV and media and just been thinking, yeah, that's how you create I mean, not that I don't want to create propaganda, but that's how
Yeah.
you create bad propaganda.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, speaking of TV, right quick,
Mhm.
like while I'm thinking of this tangent, I've been also like not rewatching. I had never seen it before. I've been watching Breaking Bad, and
Oh
just
yeah.
got to the end of season 2. And
Love
what
that
an
show.
interesting, like, for so long I've just been told like, oh, this is what happens if no healthcare.
Yeah.
And like that's the furthest thing from the truth ever. Like it's just like, no, this guy's just an abject monster. What are you guys talking about? Like this guy at no
Exactly.
point he was given like every out that he could have
Yeah.
possibly been given. Like I like it's just been so interesting to analyze it from the way that the internet looks at this show.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because and I think that I don't know, I that probably like leads into some conversation when we're talking about Mr. Robot and everything. How people see like different forms of propaganda. Because for me, like I view Skylar as a, I don't know, like an unassuming, like not very like spectacular person, but a pretty sympathetic character. She's just like, hey, listen, I don't know, this sucks, man. Like, I just
But
want you to be
everybody
part of the
hates her
family.
online.
Right,
Online,
yeah.
everybody fucking hates her
Right.
character. And I'm
It's
not gonna lie,
crazy.
I could see how I could see how I mean, I can't remember the show
Hmm.
scene for scene, but I can see how there's some scenes where after I mean, but even after you realize that your husband is a fucking drug dealer who's
Yeah.
possibly committed like other more egregious crimes such as murder, I
Hmm.
can still understand not being all the way in, right? I was
Right.
gonna say that there is some times when like it's like, okay, like you know what he does, he signed up for the shit, but nobody signs up for that shit.
No.
But I mean, like, but you know what it is, man. I think that like I made this tweet before that like I think that like media. I don't mean to make the media literacy is at an all time low, but like seriously, some
It's
people like
wild.
they should just be able to watch like like flashing colors on a wall or some
Yeah,
shit. You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Because what it is that people either identify with like straight up bad characters. Like
Hmm.
Walter White is not a good guy, but
No, there's
people look at
nothing.
him as like a family man, a hero, a
I'm
provider.
watching him just like bit by bit destroy Jesse's life. Like that's
When
the
he
art.
watches when he watches his fucking girlfriend or get an overdose and just
Yeah.
looks there
I
and doesn't
just
do
watched
anything
that.
and
Yeah.
he just watches that. I mean, dude, like, but then you have people who like dislike, and I mean, obviously with Skylar too, goes without saying that there's obviously misogyny, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
her
Mm-hmm.
just being like a woman, you know what I mean? Like just fucking character, men just fucking hate her. But like, it is also just like people disliking characters that they should maybe sympathize with. And I don't know, because
Yeah.
also art is up to interpretation,
Oh,
right? That's another thing.
absolutely. Yeah.
If art is anything about, I know I'm making very moot basic points, but if art is anything, you know, other than capturing the human experience, it's also about like, um, God, what did I just fucking say? I don't even fucking remember.
Yeah. Art
If art
art
is
art is
about
up
this and art is,
yeah, art's
but yeah,
art's up to interpretation, but at the same
but yes,
time,
yes, exactly. It's up to interpretation, but at the same time, I mean, like, I don't know, dog. It's just like it's just I I think that like unless it's like I mean, unless you're looking for like an Aesop's fable, you know what I
hmm,
mean? Where there's literally a moral at the end of the story. Like, I don't know, like watching or consuming any media. And I mean, this is especially frustrating if you're like a leftist, but also I turn that part of my brain off, you know what I mean?
sure, sure.
But like, but
Yeah, I'm just
outside
I'm
of
just there for the popcorn, and then like later I'll sit
exactly,
down and analyze and be like, what happened? You know?
exactly. But yeah, man, I don't know. It's you know what? I don't want to talk too much about TV and shit, but one thing I do want to recommend to people
Hmm.
because I've been obsessed with this show is a
Is this for all
Serial
mankind?
Experiments Lane. That for all mankind, I have been. People know I
God,
fucking love that show.
it's so
Which,
good.
dude, and the season finale was just like, I mean, I'm not an astrophysicist, but
Hmm.
I mean, just some of the science was just like didn't make any fucking sense at all. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Like it's just like, but it was just popcorn shit. It was good. But
yeah, it's good.
people should check out Serial Experiments Lane.
Oh
I
yeah, I saw
actually,
that pop up.
yeah,
It's
dude,
on
I
my
actually went
Plex
on
now. Yeah.
yeah, check it out, man. I went on Podside Picnic his
Hmm.
podcast to talk about that with my good friend Carlo and Kurt. Kurt was there at the time. It was just me and Carlo. But yeah, I love that show, man. Just as a recommendation, we're talking about TV and shows and but yeah, man.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
People check that out.
Um. Yeah, I need to. I saw it pop up. I need to dig into it right quick. It looks interesting.
Yeah, it's one
Um.
of my favorite shows, pieces of media that I've seen, man.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Well, so listen, circling back to so we don't spend I could spend hours talking about media, but
Yeah, same.
circling back to Babylon 5, we're talking about like the direct similarities that are happening right now in like Gaza and in like Israel. Like man, I don't know. Like I was looking at some of the things today that still like I honestly can't believe they kind of like we were watching the one like State Department spokesman Miller, right? That little worm
Mhm.
where he like there's this propaganda video that Mossad like put out on Twitter like a day or two ago where they're like just detonating entire buildings. And one of them's a university amongst like hospitals and everything else. And a reporter's asking him like, "Hey, listen, like how do you feel about this? Do you all have a response?" And he's just like, I mean, we don't have like all the facts on the ground, so who knows what's happened here. It's like, dude, like Mossad just put it to a fucking synthwave track. Like
Yeah.
they're showing they made a fan cam of
Yeah.
like blowing up this infrastructure. And he's like, well, obviously we regret the degradation of, you know, any infrastructure. And it's like, again, I don't think you're hearing me, man. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
they blew it up. It's gone. There is no degradation. It's not going to exist anymore. That
Yeah.
university's over, you know. And he's just
I,
like the whole time intimating like, well, we don't know what was underneath of it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just,
well, dude,
man.
I've been seeing, I actually saw that clip a couple hours ago,
Mm-hmm.
earlier today, and man, I mean, I don't know, we've talked about on the Trillbillies, and like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I'm tired of talking about this. I'm not, and I want to talk about it, but
Yeah.
it's just, if anyone, I'm sorry to anyone who's heard me talk about this, and I'm repeating myself, but it's like, I don't know, two things that I've like, my two takeaways from the past 4 months, I guess, has been one, this is such a crazy making project. Like,
Yeah.
I've used the analogy, and I'm sorry again if you've heard me say it on Twitter or on other podcasts, but it's almost like they're trying to make you wear an inside out skin suit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to invert everything that you know to be right and true. You know what I
Correct.
mean?
Yeah. No,
And
absolutely.
regardless of
Like,
your, I
what
don't
do
want
you
to say
mean? Why
regard,
would you think that that's bad? We're trying to figure it out the same as you
exactly.
are. It's like, man, their propaganda arm, the people that sit there and make this is the propaganda they've selected. You
Dude, okay, so
know?
dude, so that's the crazy making aspect, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
that we're being like told that, I mean, it's always like Israel itself is like coddled and
Mm-hmm.
sort of like, victimized, and obviously, using the horror of the Holocaust, right? And
Sure.
people smarter than me have talked about this, but the way that Israel sort of um 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 how can I say it? Sort of exploits, right?
Yeah.
Exploits that the survivors' legacy, right? Of people whose family members were survivors who died in the Holocaust. And I mean, but that even being besides the point, it's just like the crazy making, man. And then the second thing that's just kind of just floored me is like, how, like, and we talk about this on the trails a lot, right? And again, there are books been written about this that I haven't read, and people that are more well researched can talk about this. But it's just like, like, what are you even doing backing? Like, I can understand if, like, all right, they're both settler colonial projects, right?
Sure.
One that the United States inherited from the British, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's like, at what point, like, what, like, this is a literal, we are a fascist country, I believe, right? But this is a
Absolutely. Yeah.
literal, and we're settler colonial, but this isn't, I mean, we're an active settler, but this is an actual, not even actual. I can't say an actual because we are too. But the sort of reification, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of 19, 18th century colonialism, 18th, 17th, 18th century
Yeah.
colonialism.
Yeah.
And that being, and like the fact that John Fetterman can open his fucking mouth and talk about, well, I think that Israel embodies all the progressive values that all these so-called progressives, or, well, it's just so my second point is just, and I'll say some shut up. It's just like, how long can the United States maintain those contradictions? That's my
Sure.
point, right? The contradiction that you have this rogue state with nuclear weapons that we are coddling like a child, right? While
And remember,
th-
not just us either. Like
not just us
when we
either.
talk about them exploiting that like victim mentality, even France stepped up like the
Yes,
day before yesterday and it's just like, hey,
yes.
listen, everybody gets a pass after that first genocide, okay? Like I know
Germ
everything was bad in Germany, but that means they deserve a little bit more coddling than most.
Dude, Germany is like Germany's insane too because
Yeah.
it's like, yo, it's like the atonement, right, that Germany has done, right, in my opinion, has been to like support genocide and perpetuate anti-Semitism the same way that Israel does. It's an export of anti-Semitism throughout the fucking world. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I mean, like, and again, these are these contradictions, right? Like how so I don't know, man. Those are my 2 things, the crazy making and the contradictions, because
Yeah.
at some point, those fetters will burst asunder, right? You know, to paraphrase Marx.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of part of the reason why too, that like we have to like stay latched on to this vestige of settler colonialism,
Sure.
because I think to push back against that, it would indict the United States and the whole entire Western world, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Which is why I think, and I mean, I guess this point is not my point. I guess we've been talking about this on the Trills again, and people have brought this up, but you're sort of seeing like maybe the beginnings of a realignment or repolarization. You know what I mean? You
Sure.
have a reckoning, right? You have South Africa,
People
you know,
starting like, yeah, actual nations starting to say like, "Hey, wait a second." You
yeah,
know?
yeah. I think Bolivia is also cut off diplomatic ties, I believe, with Israel. You know, and these are just 2 countries. And I mean also too, you have like the Houthis as well, which I mean that's
Yeah.
a whole other conversation that you literally have the United States attacking and bombing the Houthis who are trying out of solidarity with Palestine and that after what they've been through for the past few years, right?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, if you just think about any of this for I'm sorry to ramble, man, but if you just think about any of this for even more than a moment, and you really try to parse it out and saying that, like, wait, we're being called the bad guys because we don't
Right.
support genocide. I mean, and then be listening and watching this. I mean, I'm sure that this has been driving you fucking crazy for the past couple months too, but it can be overstated, man. How
No, I
how
mean,
they're trying to make you wear the inside out skin suit. They're
yeah,
trying to
like
make you nod along with genocide. You know.
I went into DC with friends
Mm.
for the protest
How was
march.
that?
It was great. It was fantastic. And that's, I'm not going to talk about it too much too long or anything, but just like the feeling of being there, I think most of
Yeah.
all was like standing around so many other people that are just because I think you don't get that a lot in daily life. You know, you wander around, most people that you engage with may be like, apolitical or however, you're just trying to like do your daily thing. But when
Mhm.
you're like in the heart of like an actual project where people are trying to draw attention to, like outside of like what I do for work every day, like sitting down talking about news or whatever, like being like in the presence of just like thousands upon tens of thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people that are all like, no, you're not, that's not wrong at all. Like this is fucked up. Like this is a bad thing. This is genuinely an awful thing that's happening. And to hear, like speakers like, reassuring those things too. It's like I think that's not just for me because I'm like steeped in it daily. Like I'm regularly talking about this, but I think for like just people like that are going to that march maybe for the first time, I think that's got to be like so like reaffirming of
Yeah.
purpose because it can be a lot like sitting down listening to like propaganda that comes out like daily. Listen like realizing like post March that like nobody even like covered this thing. This almost near
Yeah.
500,000 people that were
The
in
same thing
DC.
with the same thing with the first DC march, and
Yeah.
and brother, I know exactly what you're talking about because when I went to the first march in DC, I had like this transcendent almost experience, and I don't want to call it a religious experience because I am
Yeah.
a materialist, but it was very much of what you're saying. It was this collective reassurance,
Mm-hmm.
right? That like I not only was I not crazy, but that there were people that cared about these issues and maybe
Right.
cared about the first time. I mean, how many people have become leftist or anti-imperialist, right? Or have at least recognized, right? And sort of took another look at the history of the United States, and its history and involvement, right, in other affairs throughout the world, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. I just feel like that. I try to. I just try to remember that because that was very galvanizing, and I don't mean to be depressing about it because on the one hand, I mean, sometimes I don't know. I don't want to be doomer right now, but sometimes I wonder how much of what we do over here,
Mm-hmm.
protesting in the streets, right?
Does things
As
for over there. Yeah, sure.
yeah, I mean, not even over there, but I mean, even like just our elected officials that they're calling for a ceasefire. Okay,
Yeah.
sure, we've seen a growing calls for a ceasefire, but dude, it's been months now. This is
Yep.
insane. But at the same time, you know, I do think something's got to give. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that the most that we can do over here is, um, you know, I don't know, continue to march, continue to talk to people, and continue to sort of like be in spaces and sort of push back against that crazy making, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
again, I don't have prescriptions for what anybody should do. I mean, I'm just some fucking dumbass on the internet, right? But I do think like organizing in events like that
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like the education and keeping up the pressure is, I don't know. I mean, not one. I mean, it's the only moral thing to do, but also two, and we could actually get into this too.
Mm-hmm.
I there's the Palestine Laboratory, which talks about how Palestine is essentially a petri dish, right,
Mm-hmm.
for high tech
This is where we test
surveillance
things,
and
absolutely.
yeah, ballistics
Yeah.
weaponry and whatnot.
And then
Um,
bring it back to places like Cop City.
exactly,
Yeah.
dude. And then there's also this I wish I could remember the name of it, but Alexander Avinya,
Mm-hmm.
um uh I forget what I forget what publication outlet he writes for, but they have a Substack and he wrote this really good article that talked about, I've mentioned it before as well. It talked about the intersection between Israel and right-wing governments in Latin America.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that he mentions towards the end is and kind of throughout is how, with the looming um present currently here, apocalypse of climate change, how Palestine is very much a um I don't know, I guess like a test run,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? In terms of limiting the freedom of mobility,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of, I mean, literally concentration camps,
Yeah.
death camps, surveillance. I mean, this is why I think that you saw protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters in Ferguson that
Mm-hmm.
were in correspondence with Palestinians, right?
Absolutely.
About how to resist against tear gas or resist against riot police. Because those communities are at the vanguard in the front line, right? Of
Yeah.
this like
I mean,
dystopian hellscape. You know what I mean?
this week you even saw I think Palantir just making a public statement saying we look forward to testing out some of our tech in the ongoing conflict, and it's like,
Absolutely.
I mean, brother, what's that for? What
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
need? What do you need to observe there? Everything's destroyed. Like, what is, if not to just again, like, just sit down and hone this technology for, future like suppression, future, limiting of again, like you said, like limiting of mobility. Like that's the plan is just, and again, when we look at this across like a broader backdrop and we talk about like climate change just continuing
Hmm.
to worsen over like the coming decades, then you start to realize like obviously like these people have a very long-term vested interest in what happens next and how to get money from people that are going to be of a class where they can kind of just navigate that versus people that are going to be either immigrants into places that experience less climate change or poor people that reside in those climate change stricken countries.
I mean,
These will all just like become more honed systems of control.
absolutely, man. I mean, and as you mentioned earlier, bringing the war home,
Mm-hmm.
which, a lot of people, some people define fascism, right, as
Yeah.
imperialism brought home, as one way to look at it. And whether it's in Eastern Kentucky, I think about 2 years ago, right, where my co-hosts from the Trillbillies reside,
Mm-hmm.
where there was historic flooding, I
Yep.
think a once in a thousand year flood, or whether, it's like in Louisiana, right? Whether it's
Mm-hmm.
like Katrina, right? Or whether it's anywhere at all where there are, you know, poor, working class, marginalized people, they're going to be the first people to feel the effects. Because going back to Palestine, just thinking about liberals, right, you know, who who make it sound as if Palestinians are just collateral,
Yeah.
or as if that this is just a side issue that is gonna hurt Biden personally, right? Like, and not thinking about, like, you're not seeing Palestinians as actual people. And I mean, we could talk like unfortunately, sadly, frustratingly for fucking days about the dehumanization of Palestinians that we've seen the
Man.
past couple months, right? But it's
Yeah.
like, you know, what I'll put it this way. At the end of that Alexander Avinia article that I'd read, and I wish I had the quote in front of me exactly. And the scientist's name, I think he's a doctor, actually, a Palestinian doctor
Mm-hmm.
who visited the border, right? I think he was in Texas, maybe. And he was standing in the shadow of the Elbit surveillance towers, the Elbit
Mm-hmm.
system
Mm-hmm.
surveillance towers. And he said that climate change is the global Nakba, you know?
Yeah. Sure.
And I
Absolutely.
mean, like, I just keep thinking about that line, man. And I mean, I guess this is where I was trying to go with, organizing, is that this is sort of how we shore up our defenses, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By, community, by organizing, by educating ourselves. And I mean, you know, people, people may know me as a doomer, as an apocalyptician, and like I make jokes about prepping and what I mean, and shit
Yeah.
like that. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
sure, that's one way. I mean, you should probably learn how to cook and
Yeah.
hunt or grow
But
food or do all of these things. Sure, ride a horse, perhaps,
right.
maybe take up some archery. But like, at the end of the day, like seriously speaking, though, it's like the only way out is through together,
Absolutely.
and
I,
like
I speak
that's
on this often. Like, we have to, like, reaching out to our communities is a bygone, like, imperative. That's a thing that needs to occur like yesterday. Like,
yeah,
we don't have, like, the thing that I've been facing is this discussion around the election, because that's what,
yeah,
everybody on Twitter's focused on right now. And how could you possibly go and, try to oppose Biden, or even like discuss the idea of not voting for him? And it's like, I think very easily. I think I'm very interested in what happens within the state, and more specifically what happens within my own community, as I think a lot of us should be. Like,
yeah,
that's the first and foremost thing. I'll still go and vote down ballot because I'm very interested in, like, what's going to happen to the people around me. We've already seen over the past 4 years that most things that have been most suppressionary measures towards, like, marginalized people have happened on the state level. I think
sure,
I think it's
sure,
I think obviously I guess a whole discussion about, like, Biden versus Trump or anything like that, but
yeah, yeah,
mine is just an absence of not wanting to support that person in favor of, wishing we had a better world, that he wasn't completely complicit in the genocide of yet another people,
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, I
and
think that core focus for me is just, like, talking about, like, how do we, like, find, like night and day, like, I moved from Austin last year and I live in Richmond now.
mm-hmm.
And just night and day, the amount of, like, community focus there is here, the amount of, like for everybody that talks up, like, oh, keep Austin weird, etc., it's not. It's a very, like, tech, like, corporate kind of town these days, it's
Well, it
very
feels like
much.
even the I've heard that before as well,
Yeah.
and it even feels like the keep Austin weird is even a sort of commodified and
Yeah,
almost
absolutely.
corporatized
It's made
sort
as a
of.
shield against, like,
Yeah,
what's
yeah,
actually kind of happening there, which is
yeah.
still, call it Democrat if you want, but it's very much a Texas Democrat type of, like, town,
Well, dude, look, well, I'm in Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
And in Atlanta, under a Democratic mayoral administration, under
Mm-hmm.
several now, at least two, um, there's Cop City is happening. If no
Yeah.
one knows, they're building a cop training facility, a mock city.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, they're cutting down a sizable portion of a forest that's known as the lung of Atlanta
Yeah.
because of how much what is it? How much CO2 I guess that it traps, and
Yeah.
how it cools, the city. And also how the trees and the roots themselves are helpful when it comes to stemming flooding or preventing flooding, right?
Mhm.
And the city of Atlanta has pretty terrible infrastructure when it comes to that. But you were talking about the election earlier, and and I guess to even tie into Cop City, the fact that all of that's being done with uh with the approval, right?
Yeah.
And pretty much the silence of the Georgia Democratic Party.
Yeah, sure.
And this is what I'll say just about elections, man, because I think like I think on the trolls we've been especially doomerish about this, and people have gotten upset with us about this, and
Mhm.
people get upset with me now, but I'm not telling nobody not to vote. I mean,
No,
it
same,
doesn't
yeah.
it doesn't
Vote your conscience, man. It doesn't
vote
matter to
vote your
me.
vote your conscience, man. And at the end of the day, I'm not even gonna say that it doesn't matter, but what I will say is that the people that are the liberals, right? The people that are already vote scolding,
Mhm.
and trying to guilt you into voting, and the people who have said despicable things, the same people who were so concerned about kids in cages, but not only didn't give a shit once there were kids in cages, but now especially don't give a shit when children are being slaughtered, right? And
Yeah.
entire people are being slaughtered. Like, what I just find interesting about these people is that if you ask them how many more Palestinians have to die, right,
Mhm.
for you to either change your opinion or maybe like reconsider your support of Biden, or to at least shut the fuck up when somebody, especially somebody who's Arab, somebody who's Muslim,
Mhm.
maybe for a pretty good fucking reason doesn't want to vote for him, right? Like, it's just somebody mentioned in my comments the other day, but it's like it seems like when there's no ideology left, when
Mhm.
they're running on fumes, when I say running on fumes, I mean, think about Biden, like even literally, not even metaphorically, but like literally a dying president presiding over a dying party, over a dying empire, right?
Yeah.
And like, that's again, why are you supporting this fucking settler colonial state that's younger than a lot of people's grandparents, right? It's again running on almost like on autopilot, on cruise control, right? Not having any idea what the fuck is going on anymore, losing control completely and just going with emotions, right?
Yeah.
And kind of living in the shadows of semi-rational men during the Cold War, for example, right? And when I say semi-rational, I mean these were crazy motherfuckers who wanted to nuke the world. But
Yeah.
I mean, like they
Yeah.
all. I feel like also I could give them at least some credit. I mean, I can't give them credit, but I mean, like they're not leaking out the brains, right? Like brains like tapioca. My whole entire point is this:
Yeah.
it's just like,
They
you know,
still were very like, present. They understood exactly what they were
yeah,
doing, like they were, and I guess to some extent, like, maybe Biden does. I know, like he still has those basic ruminations of upholding empire that he always has as a
mhm.
politician.
He still has
I
rumblings in his tummy, that which
Right,
means
but
he's
I
hungry.
don't I don't know if like he understands like the mission anymore, Like I
Yeah,
don't like that guy's going to be 86 by the time he's out of office. Like,
dude. And I mean that's the thing about it too, man. It's like like dude, whether it was Bernie, I mean, I don't fucking want Bernie to run again. I didn't want him to run again. I mean, dude, like, I'm sorry, but I think that it's insane that you have somebody who was born like, I mean, I don't even know what I'm trying. I'm thinking of like Joe Biden is like, like, I don't even know, man. Like, I think about that picture of him looking at the quantum computer, you know?
yeah.
And dude, don't get me wrong, I'd probably be looking at a quantum computer and be fucking fascinated too, but
Sure,
it's just like
sure.
just as like a visual. I mean, also when it was his birthday a couple months ago and they put those candles, those 87 candles around the cake, and it was just this
Man. What a
conflagration of fucking burning. It
yeah.
just was like, this is such a great metaphor. This is a
It is.
really
Yeah,
apt,
yeah, yeah.
bleak metaphor, but I don't know, man. When it comes to the election, dude, I think what's more important is what's going on in your community. And I mean, because even if they lose next year or this year, um, I mean, we've seen this before. Like, they didn't even take their licks, right? They immediately turn around and blame
Correct.
anybody. Yeah, they blame the
No matter
left, they
no matter
blame
what
black people,
happens.
they
Yeah.
blame, they blame the right, they blame whatever, but it's like I don't know, man. So it's all of that being said, it's I don't want to be completely doomerish and bleak because I think again, you know what actually somebody brought up?
Hmm.
Katie had brought this up. Um a friend of the Trillbillies and personal friend Katie had said that what we're seeing now, whether it's like uh propaganda from Al Qassam or whether I don't know if the Houthis have put out any propaganda.
Hmm.
But
Well, to hear all of
just
Twitter, it was a 19-year-old lad that doesn't speak English was the propaganda master. But no, go ahead.
dude, no, but it's like it's amazing. It's amazing because like you're able to see in real time like these revolutionary like liberatory or individuals that are like fighting for a liberatory project. You get to see in real time
Hmm.
like how that's being done, and not only is it galvanizing, but it's also hopeful, you know what I mean? It makes me, and for every horrible fucking awful video that I see of dead children or some psychotic, supposed bit of satire, or it's not even satire actually because it's straight up just it's just like I mean it's genocidal comedy. I didn't even know
Hmm.
that could be a genre of comedy,
Worse
right? But
SNL. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, whatever you're seeing on these really TikToks and late night
Yeah.
shows and shit. But I don't know, man. Like I just think about that first video we had seen of that guy bulldozing the Palestinian man bulldozing the that fence,
Yeah. Yeah.
and like, screaming and running through it, man. And like, one thing I gotta say about the hellscape in the year 2024, we're living in this cyberpunk tech, it's not even really a dystopia because cyberpunk dystopia would be at least cool
Yeah.
because then
Yeah.
I could get like a
Or the most
robotic arm.
boring,
Yeah, this is the most boring. Yeah, but like all that being said, it's kind of cool that you can, that we are all sort of interconnected in this way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Which is why again, it's fucking super important that Palestinians in Gaza or in the West Bank are and people throughout the world that are lending their voices to this cause. I mean, it's important that I mean, this is a moot point without being said. It's super important that they not be silenced, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's troublesome is that you're seeing that across platforms and institutions.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't know. It makes me think back to Elon buying, Twitter. And I know there's like a lot of conspiracy like thrown around like why he would do this. He's actually doing it to like silence like, a lot of speech that kind of existed on there. But I think to an extent like it has absolutely like scrambled a lot of pretty pertinent reporting that would come out during
Yeah,
conflict, Like it
yeah,
has and whether or not that is up to him, I don't think he's a mastermind. I just think he's a dumb idiot that wanted to buy something because of a meme and then realized the meme had gone too far and got forced to buy it by the court.
exactly.
Um,
Pretty much.
but I think like I think just the overall like I don't think of him as a mastermind. I think the overarching idea of capital subsuming these things to the point where they're not useful anymore for like liberatory struggle is
Mm,
just a facet of our reality, right? Like it's not on him specifically as a rich guy, but because these things keep happening, their driving force, the overall idea is going to be to stop like a proletariat from rising up or to stop like an oppressed people from fighting back. So in that, these they will always by their own admission or not, these things will always be affected by their like looming like ownership or intervention.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think about that, man. I know we're gonna close out, but that's a whole other conversation too,
Yeah.
because I find that like, on the one hand, I am lauding this technology and its capacity to share stories of liberation,
Hmm.
to connect communities, um, to shed light upon horrors, right, and
Yeah.
injustices. But at the same time, this sort of idea that I mean even goes back to like the beginnings of the internet. in Silicon
Hmm.
Valley, right? That the internet was sort of going to be this modern symposium of sharing ideas, of goods, that it would be autonomous, that it wouldn't be filtered through, the channels of, multi-billion dollar telecommunications companies, all the shit that we're seeing now, right?
Yeah.
But I don't even know if that's necessarily true, right? Because, and I'm thinking about this show, this documentary series on Means TV
Hmm.
called Preserving Worlds that people should check
Yeah.
out. I
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
actually interviewed the two co-creators of that show
Oh, nice.
on Everybody Loves Communism.
Yeah.
So even though I don't record that show anymore, people should still check out pretty good episodes. But
Hmm.
we we talked to the co-creators of the show, and one of the things that I'd brought up or thought about was sort of, I forget the names of these people, but these individuals who were pretty much the trendsetters and the true believers of the internet, right?
Yeah.
And like they weren't necessarily like left-wing socialists, like they were capitalists and libertarian and like sure had a hodgepodge of sure like, socially liberal, maybe even radical views,
Hmm.
with a strong belief in the profit motive, right? And the free market. Um, but I don't know, man. It just gets me about that's my point. I guess like all that's to say that it just gets me thinking about how, on the one hand, technology itself is not inherently evil,
Sure.
obviously. I mean, evil
Sure.
sounds silly, right? That's a silly argument to make, but
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not inherently
It's
geared
not
towards
not
profit, right?
malicious out of its own, making.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, and it doesn't have to be necessarily created just for the purpose of uh um um accruing a profit, right?
Yeah.
Um um but at the same time, you have to ask yourself like, well, what is this technology and what is its usefulness and what is its worth in, I mean, even at a core level, at its foundation, in a society that's, based on advanced commodity production. Like, I don't know, like, I mean, this is a conversation people talk about degrowth, I guess, as well. But like, some of these, like, it's not that these technologies, I guess, wouldn't exist. These services might not exist, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I guess I should give examples. I mean, I don't know. I can't think of, I don't know. I mean, I guess there would have to be like, the gig economy, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't exist, right? Um, under a socialist society. And I don't even know where I'm going with this, but like it 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 does just make me think about how we, I don't know, going into the 2024 and into like the rest of the 21st century, like how we commandeer, and I mean, especially looking in light of the Elon Musk takeover of Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Like how we use or maybe don't use technology. Like
Yeah.
Edward on Wesco um talks about Luddism,
Man,
or neo-Luddism, and
it's
Brian Merchant too, you know what I mean?
it can become more and more attractive every day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And which I mean, the Luddites were, people don't know, the Luddites weren't necessarily like anti-technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Inherently, they were just like, "Yo, y'all motherfuckers have these machines that are like, we're just tending to these machines, and
Hmm.
you own the machines, and we're going through horrible conditions." Like they just wanted to own the means of production, is what
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
or have more control at least, So I don't know. That was a wide ranging conversation, man. We talked about media. We talked about Palestine, Gaza. We talked about
We went through the
the
gamut. Yeah.
election. Yo, is there anything that you wanted to touch on the last few minutes before we go? Anything that you were thinking about, you wanted to talk about?
Like I said, I think the only thing that was really like in my like we touched on it briefly, but just real quick, I think there were a lot of people I think that were upset at the. Did you see the Biden clip yesterday, where they
Where he
asked him they
said,
asked him about bombing Yemen, and he's just like, oh yeah, we're gonna continue to bomb them,
yeah, even if it's not
and
working, yeah,
yeah, it's not working. And I think there were a lot of people that were really pressed about that on on social media, and I was just like, I think that's one of the more honest things that he's said. Like it's surprising, I guess, that he said it, but I think that's one
yeah,
of the more honest things that he's ever said in his presidency. I think that is empire, like
yeah,
just
yeah,
laid bare. Like that
yeah,
is how we continue on until we are a shambling corpse of an empire. That is how we will continue to do things.
Yeah, it just becomes, yeah, and I think that that touches on what we were talking about earlier, right? It's
Hmm.
just like sort of like this idea of like there's nothing in the tank left and they're running on
Yeah.
fumes, right?
Yeah.
And like
That's
I
all they
think
know. That's been
not
the
only
status quo for decades.
for decades, and it's like I mentioned, it's not only, I guess, that you're right. It's not only that all you have left is scolding people, right? And
Hmm.
moralizing and policing people's like behaviors and thoughts and shit, whatever. But it's also, where they just become completely mask off, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
almost feels like sometimes like it almost feels like a dare, you know what I mean? I mean, I'm making light of this, but it feels like
Yeah.
sometimes it's like I dare you, motherfucker. I'm gonna say it. Like it's just like I don't know, dude. Like the past, like I guess his presidency, right? And I mean, Trump's presidency was a mask off moment. I mean, Biden's wow, Obama's presidency was, but then I think about the Flint, Michigan thing, right? The water thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think about him drinking that, and I think about that at least being seared into my mind is one of those last few public displays of like of saving face or of
Yeah.
like straight up just like knowing that you're lying to the people, but at least willing to go through the act of
Correct.
pretending. Again, we were talking about
Like playing,
appearances and essence.
yeah, playing at least like some sort of, pageantry
Yes.
to
Perfect word
what
for it. Yeah.
people like still giving in to the idea of the bread and circuses. We're now like, I think you're right. Like this idea of people like vote scolding, they don't even require bread and circuses for this anymore. They
No.
just they because what else
They
is
don't
there
even need to
left?
win. They
Yeah,
don't even need
like
to win to do it.
right, like
They don't even want to win, I don't think. It doesn't matter to them whether they win. I
right,
mean, it matters
like
to some people, but
sure. But I think like for like writ large, I think a lot of liberals just kind of like they're just dedicated to defending the project because if not, then a worse project might come into to play.
yeah.
And I think at least for that, like that is for them just kind of amorphous and vague. It will just be bad,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
quantifying that is a lot harder because you can say like, well, day one Trump will do these things or whatever. Maybe it'll make it so you can't have elections anymore. But like the real like on the ground feeling that like communities are going to have, that people are going to be impacted by this, like they don't have any understanding or any care of that. It's just
Exactly.
we have to preserve the liberal project, otherwise this one could be worse,
Exactly. And you
and
know
we
what
have to do
that's
that at all costs.
yeah. And that's excuse me. That's such a good point, man, because I don't know when they tell people, liberals, I'm saying, when
Hmm.
liberals tell people that, well, it's what the other option is if you don't vote for Biden,
Right.
right? And it's like, you know, when they're prognosticating like a year, like maybe 2 years,
Yeah.
whatever, into the future, it's like people don't think about what I mean, of course, people think about future consequences of current actions they make, of course, all the time. But if we're
Sure.
talking
Sure.
about like an election, people are thinking about what's happening right now. You know what I mean? What's
Yes.
being done right now. They're not thinking about, well, I gotta fucking throw on my chips because I gotta shore up this win for Biden because Trump. I mean, are you asking like Muslim and Arab communities
Right.
right now? You asking them right now to like, I mean, again, this is a moot point. People know this already, but it's the liberal ethos of but wait,
Yeah.
but it hasn't even, dude, it's devolved now into not even but wait, but like whatever the inverse of that is, right? Like, I
Yeah.
mean, oftentimes I'm like, are the liberals accelerationists? Are they more accelerationists than the fucking conservatives? Because
Right.
sometimes I think the conservatives, and Terrence has brought this up on the show, and I agree with this. Sometimes I think the conservatives are actually like the most cowardly. Like, I mean, we know not most of the time, we know they're cowards, but when I say
Sure.
cowards, I mean like when shit hits the fan, they will run and hide under their bunkers, right?
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
literally, they're not fucking gonna start like
You
a
saw
fourth
it like I think the perfect encapsulation of that is Tom Cotton on 1-6, right? Like when push came to
Yes,
shove, he's just
yes,
like, I gotta get out of here.
yes.
And that's supposed to
Fucking
be a
Josh
hardened
Hawley,
Army Ranger, former Army Ranger.
dude. Josh Hawley putting up his fucking fist. You know what I'm
Yep.
saying? Like
Yep.
for these motherfuckers. But like the liberals, though, dude, we've seen it over the past couple months, man.
Yeah.
it almost seems like the Biden administration at least is willing to throw in its lot with this genocidal fascistic settler colonial state with nuclear weapons, even if that means starting like inciting a regional flowing into a world war that's possibly nuclear. I mean, that isn't this is not to say again that, well, the I mean, I don't care if you vote for Democrats either way, but it's not to say, well, don't vote for Democrats or Democrats are worse than Republicans. But all it is to say is that like this shit sucks all the way down, dog.
Yeah.
It's pretty fucking bad, but also too. I guess
Yeah.
I should end it on a positive note. It's I mean, hey man,
We
you
can
talk
make it.
about
I don't know. We can make it better for at least people around us. I think that's I think that was an underpinning, like kind of we were
yeah,
talking about a little bit earlier. If
yeah,
you want to leave it positive, yeah, like we can. I think I try to stay away from people like doing the voter shaming and stuff as much as possible. Like I thought about it
mhm,
yesterday. I was telling my chat. I thought about it yesterday. I saw somebody being weird and like transphobic to one of my friends on Twitter. I almost hopped in replies, and then I was like, no, I've got a fulfilling life outside of this. I don't think I have to do that. I
yeah,
just like
yeah,
walked away from my computer. I was
yeah,
like, no, that person's still going to be awful tomorrow. And that's just kind of how I like think about like voter shamers as well. It's like they're going to be I'm not going to change their mind. They're going to
no,
be awful tomorrow. They're going to continue down this path. And I don't think they have like a breath for the project at the end of this. Like they
no,
just want to they're happy that Biden is bombing Yemen for treats,
yep,
you
yep,
know, and
yep,
that has to be the status quo, and we can't let that be the status quo for us. Like we have to get involved with people, we have to get involved with our communities, and we have to like provide like a glimpse of something better. There has to be like hope in all this outside of just bemoaning like what's happening,
100%. I mean, at the end of the day, man, we gotta like, I'll close out with this, man. I think we gotta like, you know, we we have to like actualize an alternative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we have to like refuse that outside inside out skin suit.
Yeah.
We have to refuse. And I mean, I guess I guess what it is they want to make you think that you're maladjusted.
Mm-hmm.
They want to make you think that like you are. I mean, it's a whole other conversation, man. It's something we talk about on the shows a lot, but it's an inverse of meaning and a loss of meaning.
Yes.
And they want you to nod along with genocide, and whether it's talking to neighbors or friends or coworkers, or whether it's going out there in the streets, or whether it's like um doing some more organizing. um I don't know, man. I think we just have to. I mean, I know it sounds like a very passive thing to say, keep the pressure up, but for all of those Palestinians that can't speak,
Mm-hmm.
for all those kids, man, you know what I mean, who had their futures like snatched away from them. Um, I mean, for everybody, man, like if we're looking at the prospect of a fucking world war,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, man. I do hope that this is the beginning, or the seeds at least, of like a resurgence of an anti-war movement in this country.
I hope so. Yeah.
Because like we're hurtling towards something terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
and and I don't know, man, and not good.
Yeah.
But that being said,
Yeah. There's hope, I think, there's
it's good shit. It's good shit
we
too.
have to find it. Yeah.
It's good shit too.
One more time, if you want to tell people, where to find you, what you're working on, what you got in the hopper, go for it.
Yeah, yeah, sure. People can once again check me out at Afrocosmist on Twitter, Afrocosmist, and they can check out the Trillbillies or Struggle Session or Everybody Loves Communism.
Mhm.
And I'm also I've been writing fiction,
Yeah.
and actually I have a short story that'll be published in the coming months with Blood Knife magazine and Brave New Lit, which is a online no actually online, and they do print
Oh, nice.
publications as well, print editions as well.
Yeah.
Magazine based out of Switzerland.
Cool.
So people can check my page out on Twitter, I guess, and I'll let you know when that drops, and they can read it and check it out. So
Excellent.